11:35 p.m. We got the big, bad game of the week, in my opinion, and everybody else's opinion. Top 10 matchup here in LSU and Florida State. This one is a neutral site game. It was played in Orlando last year, I believe, and this year will be in New Orleans. Is that correct? I know they swapped them back and forth. They did a neutral site in Florida and then a neutral site in Louisiana.
Okay.
So this one is a 2.5 point favorite for the LSU Tigers, 58 point over under. And you know what? You've actually got, this blows my mind. You got positive money on Florida State on the money line.
Right.
Vegas is bullish on this one, and it seems like they are just baiting you to take that money line for Florida State. So, without further ado, let's get into the big honcho here. What you got, Mason, on this one?
Well, as far as the breakdown goes, I mean, look, you've got a lot returning for LSU, and a lot even more returning for Florida State. This is really, to me, this game's all about who's gotten better since the last time we faced. Because they've had the same amount of days, right? They've got a similar amount of returning talent. So, which team is getting better developed? We know LSU is more talented as far as from a high school recruiting standpoint. Florida State has done a better job of using the transfer portal, but they've had to do that. They've got less than 50% in their blue chip ratio of 4 and 5 star players. So they've kind of done what they've had to match what some of these top tier programs are doing around the country. Really excited to see this. If you look position group by position group, I look at quarterback, Jaden Daniels and Jordan Travis. I'm calling that a push. I don't give either one the edge there. At running back, I would say Florida State has a little bit of the edge there. On offensive line, I'm giving that edge to LSU. And so we're pretty much 1-1 there. Wide receivers, I would definitely say LSU. And I'll throw the tight ends with that, tight ends and wide receivers. And then as far as the defense goes, I would give the defensive line interior to LSU, but I think that Florida State has better edge rushers. And then I would call the linebackers a push, and I would also call the secondary a push. They're both not that great in the secondary, in my opinion. But overall, I mean, if you go position group by position group, LSU might have a slight edge. So that being said, I mean, I think that this is a pretty good number here at 2.5. If you had me bet on it, I would say that LSU could cover that and win by at least a field goal, just because most teams are decided by at least a field goal. So, and I think that LSU is going to win this game, even with it being in Florida. But man, this is one of the best games. It was one of the best games of the season last year, really. And it was a great one to start with, and I think it will be again this year. For both teams, whoever loses, like, you're not out of it, right? But it definitely will help keep you in that, top 10, top 5 range throughout the rest of the season, and help keep you in people's thoughts as a playoff contender. I'm really excited to see sort of the matchup, and I'm actually in the trenches specifically. I'm anxious to see what Florida State's defensive front is able to do against LSU's offensive line. I think, like many games, this one's going to be won in the trenches, but I think that LSU is going to be a little bit better up front, and that's where I give them the edge.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said it right. The game is in Florida. It's at Camping World Stadium in Orlando. So last year it was in New Orleans. I First of all, if I'm making a play on this game, I'm busting the over on the
There you
58.
go.
And if you're listening to this and you're looking for a bet on that, I would bet that now because I think that number is probably going to go up as the week goes on. As you mentioned, I don't think either one of these teams' strengths is their secondary on their defense. I know it's not for LSU. Florida State is the one who's got some more. Um, they added. Well, they both did. They both added a lot of transfers. LSU's secondary is almost exclusively transfers. So really, they're both kind of an unknown as far as that goes. And LSU, I think that's kind of their Achilles heel this year. Is why I bring it up. I think that that's probably going to be the aspect of their team that stops them from getting where they want to go. But with all that being said, I like the over. I like over 58 here. I am super interested to see how LSU is able or not able to run the ball. If Florida State wants to win this game, I think it's a playmaker is going to have to be Jared Verse. He's going to have to make plays on LSU's quarterback if they're looking to win this game, and he's going to need to probably have a couple sacks and a tackle or two for loss type game from him. And he's a top 5 edge rusher in the game, so it's very, very possible. But I think this will be a better offensive line than what we saw from LSU last year. So it will be interesting to see how they hold up against a very talented front seven for Florida State. That's who's going to be able to establish running the ball. I think is probably, I think you're a wash on scoring points in the air, but whichever team can figure out how to run the ball after they get a lead and run the clock and nuke the game, I think is probably going to be the one that ends up taking the victory here at a 2.5 point spread. Obviously, Vegas has got this damn near coin flip, right? So, and maybe even a point of that is since the game's played in Florida. But I'm taking if I'm betting this, I'm betting the over, and if I'm taking a team, I'm taking LSU to win, and I'd probably take the 2.5 point spread there on that one. Anything else on that game, Mason? I can't wait to watch that one. That's gonna be freaking fantastic. That was a great game last year. Everybody remembers that. That just like set the tone for college football last year for a crazy year.
It really did, and I do think that it will be similarly a crazy game. I wonder how much of a takeaway we can glean from this game, being that if one team just gets absolutely throttled, do we take them out of the playoff hunt? If Florida State,
Yes.
and I think it would more than likely be Florida State who you would take out if they lose. I mean, don't get me wrong, they could come back and beat Clemson twice, but at that point, you might just say, man, maybe the ACC is just really down this year. Maybe Clemson's just not as good as we thought, if they get absolutely beat by LSU. But then there's a case to be made if Clemson beats Notre Dame, and maybe they are good, So overall, I don't think that this game's going to matter too much, win or lose. But I do wonder if LSU beats Florida State by 21, what are we saying? What's the knee jerk reaction there, and are people kind of throwing them off the cliff at that point?
I'm not big on talking about playoffs during the regular season, but it is a reality of our game these days. And I have to say, whichever team loses here is, in my eyes, like 95% chance they're out of the playoff. Because I don't see either one of them getting through the whole rest of the year without another loss. And we're not going to have a 2-loss team in the playoff this year. We never have, and it's not going to start this year, I don't believe. So whoever does lose this game, their backs against the wall the entire rest of the year. And I expect my picks were for both of these teams to play for their respective conference championships. So that's an extra chance to lose right there too. So I am kind of whoever loses this game, you're out of my playoff picture. To be honest with you, because like I said, neither one of these is going undefeated the rest of the year. I don't believe.
Yeah, it would take a lot to get them back in, and a lot from other teams. Obviously LSU would have to, if they were to lose, would have to come back, beat Alabama, and also win the SEC. It would make for a tough road. And whereas if they win this game, they could lose to Alabama and not make it to the SEC championship game. And if Alabama beat Georgia, you'd probably have LSU in over Georgia. So I could definitely see that happening. But yeah, tougher road for Florida State coming out of the ACC, and if they were to lose.
Yeah, I think so too. It's hey, it's crazy to say that. That's why college football is so good. And I'm not going to get on this long spill about this, but this is why I'm opposed to these huge playoff fields. Because if you got a huge playoff field, I feel like neither one of these teams cares if they lose this game. It doesn't matter at all. But with the 4-team playoff that we have now, this game does matter. It's like a playoff game in week 1. And that's what makes college football so damn good. And I really don't want to see that go away. This game is not near as big if you've got a 12, 16, or 24-team playoff, because one team could lose it 49-0 and still make the playoff, and still lose regular season games, and they're still going to get to go where they want to go, and so that's a perfect example of a game that's going to lose luster as we add teams, but not this year. We've got a 14 playoff, and I'm thankful for it, because it's going to be a really, really, really fun year to see who makes the Final Four. And moving on to the last game, and